Back in the saddle.
We've been recording this podcast a lot. We all got hungry and had to take a little za break.
A little pizza break?
A little za break. But guess what? We're back. And I think before the break, we were talking a little bit about Jackal Quick Connect, which is, the old school, if you will, API for the traditional devs. Is that what we can call them? The Web2 devs? The traditional devs.
Yeah, you want like a traditional, like the Quick Connect is an S3 API. It's for everything that you're used to using S3 buckets for. So like most applications, most use cases, they're using S3.
It truly is the missionary position of ways that you could
say that
to the Jackal Protocol.
You could say that.
That is something you could say.
You could say that.
Well, let's talk about the new age. Let's talk about Web3. Let's talk about the Jackal Outpost, and we'll probably spend a little bit of time on this because I feel like this is the most new, one of the more bespoke kind of features of the Jackal protocol. So, simply put, what is the Jackal Outpost?
Yeah, I can start high level. So the Jackal Outpost is, number one, a smart contract that wraps all of the Jackal protocol's blockchain modules into a smart contract that can mimic it. And then we forward deploy that on other blockchains. So basically, if we're going to deploy it on Base, for example, we have to write it in Solidity. If we're going to deploy it on Archway, it's in Cosmosm, right? So that's kind of how we build this thing, where it mimics our blockchain. We deploy them there. And then what happens is a user can access all the functionality of Jackal right there on that blockchain with a smart contract call. And then that smart contract packets up a little message. It puts it in the mailbox and then shoots it over to the Jackal blockchain, where we now take actions on behalf of that user through like message bridging technology, basically.
And just to be clear, you say it mimics the blockchain. It's not taking the Jackal blockchain and like copying it and making a new.
No, it's not a new blockchain on another blockchain. It's like it's the blockchain inception a little bit. No, we're not doing that. But Martin, just to like, how does it work? Like, how much does it mimic? What does it mimic? And how does it like kind of package messages and shoot them to us?
The way that we kind of run things is we've built out the Jackal protocol itself, and we have Cosmosm enabled on the protocol. What this means is we can deploy smart contracts on the Jackal protocol themselves that have their own Jackal accounts. And so what we're able to do is we're able to create the system on the Jackal protocol that is managed by some multi-sig wallet type of situation, where anytime that device that's owning that wallet wants to create a transaction on the Jackal protocol, it can do so through different users. So if you and Jaden both have system accounts running on this central multi-sig situation that we put in the middle, it's able to say, well, Jaden's transactions go to this account and Patrick's transactions go to that account. And so we can keep everything really separate and concise and give you accounts on the Jackal protocol that are controlled by a middleware system.
Kind of like how Axelar works with their blockchain. And
very similar, right? Yeah. So on like Ethereum, for example, or Base or any other EVM chain, we have a smart contract that kind of outlines everything you can do. And then that middle system is listening to those blockchains. And if I create like a buy storage transaction on Base, it's going to listen in on Base's blockchain, take that buy storage transaction, build out a transaction of its own to be forwarded to the Jackal protocol for the user account of whoever made that transaction over on Base. So it can tell like if you on Base are making a transaction or if you're on Base making a transaction. It knows to differentiate those things and which account on Jackal to forward those transactions to. So you can think of it a lot like
IBC for storage.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to how IBC works. We really focus right now on kind of single direction transactions where IBC, right, you can take a token from one network to the other and then back again. Because the storage system doesn't exist on these other platforms, we have nothing to send back, right? We have confirmation that what we did on the Jackal chain is correct and we can send that data back. But you're never going to hit a point where you go on Jackal and be like, I want to buy storage on Base.
Yeah.
So we've only needed to engineer it to be single directional. And so we can aggregate multiple networks onto the Jackal protocol using a relayer system.
Cool. I also don't know if we've like fully said this yet, but the Jackal Outpost, it's a way for us to sell storage, provide storage to other blockchains.
On every blockchain.
On ideally every blockchain that like an outpost is on. So I feel like that's like the biggest selling point for like a Outpost is like DAOs can buy storage.
Yeah.
Other types of blockchains can buy storage. Smart contracts can buy
Web3
storage.
developers that are building applications, smart contracts, even users. If someone builds like an application that uses that Outpost for storage on that blockchain, let's say that it's on Archway, for example, and you have Amber, which is an NFT marketplace. If they plug Jackal in for their NFTs, then like all the users that are creating NFTs on Amber are using Jackal, but not on Jackal, which is pretty cool. It's a huge distribution advantage at the end of the day. You have this.
Do we have anybody that like competes in this particular realm? Because like I feel like this is where all the traditional clouds like fall short. Like they cannot sell storage directly to smart contracts or DAOs or dApps or other types of blockchains. But also, I don't know, like do Filecoin and Arweave and all these other storage protocols have an ability to tap into all these other blockchains and like sell to their existing Web3
So Filecoin
communities?
and Arweave and Iris and all these different protocols, right now they just use an API, right? So it's like an API, anyone can use an API, like just like Jackal Quick Connect, for example, right? Or Jackal Pin. It's just an API. You can't really do much. You have to kind of pay with credit cards. Sometimes they take tokens for that. But inherently you have like the centralized choke point of failure. Also, you don't have the programmability, right? So you don't have like the file trees or permission system or the encryption or all these different ways that you can program that. It's very, very rudimentary where you store file and get file. And it's kind of like this weird choke point.
So we got the Archway Outpost. Base is on the way. After the Base Outpost launch,
Should we just spill the beans right now for all of them?
well, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go next?
We're not like too restrictive with this information.
If you watched 2 hours into this video already, we I guess pretty much we have Base, then we have I think Polygon, Sonium, Monad. Am I missing any right now for EVM land?
Optimism, Arbitrum, and then
Optimism,
obviously Ethereum mainland.
Yeah, mainnet as well. And then after that, then we have to rebuild the outpost because, as I said earlier, every single time we deploy the outpost, and if it's written in Solidity, for example, we can do all the EVMs. But if we want to go Solana, we got to rewrite in Rust.
Oh, awesome.
And if we want to go to Sui or like an Aptos, for example, we got to rewrite that in Move, right? So
Might be a good opportunity for you or anyone to say why we decided to focus on, obviously Archway was our first outpost.
Yeah.
But it might be a logical point for us to talk at least a little bit on why we chose to go the EVM route. I don't want to say initially, but after Archway.
It's just a distribution question, right? So like when we look at where we want to deploy, we power rank based on a few things. If we're going to build it, how many other places can we deploy that? And number two, where are the majority of the developers of like the 26,000 developers that are in crypto right now? Where are they, right? So Base was the fastest growing for developers, number one, and also it's EVM. So if we hit Base, we can also hit another 3 out of the top 5 places where developers are right now. So you can go to Polygon, you can go to Arbitrum, you can go to Monad, you can go to Barachain, you can go to all these different places where developers are starting to build. So EVM was the most obvious because it's the most used. Next, obviously, Solana is like an absolute Goliath in the industry as well. So we're going to have to rewrite it for Rust to hit up Solana. And then if the like a Sui or an Aptos continues on the trajectory that they're going right now, like Sui's going gangbusters, we're going to have to hit there. And eventually, like we can even hit Bitcoin L2s if we want.
Yeah.
But they're going to be a little bit slower.
Any smart contracting platform is eventually fair game. It just comes down to how quickly we can build it out for their specific use case. Like I know Starknet is kind of like we've talked to Starknet as well, but they same thing. They have a different programming language with a
What's
separate
theirs?
VM.
Do you remember?
Cairo,
yes.
Yeah, it's
Great team over at Starknet.
Yeah, shout out Starknet guys. They've been really chill, super chill, easy to work with.
So the Jackal Outpost is just a connection from Jackal Storage Protocol to any blockchain that has smart contracting.
Yeah, like the best way I like to think about it, right, is like essentially we're just taking an external hard drive and just plugging it into your blockchain. So like the USB-C cord is the outpost, right? We're just plugging it in to every single blockchain that we possibly can.
So another thing I want to touch on with the Outpost, and sometimes I feel like this gets a little bit lost because we talk about Jackal Vault and how people can upload, files to Jackal Vault, and 1 terabyte is $15 a month. And just going back to the ethos of like why you guys built Jackal, like some of the things you guys did is we want it to be flexible, and I feel like the Outpost has this kind of outlet where like people can potentially almost like wrap the cost of storage in kind of like a gas fee kind of format,
Yeah.
or just I also just want to touch on the fact that these storage plans are ultra elastic, and
Yes.
if someone's buying storage through like an Outpost, they do not have to buy 1 terabyte a month for $15.
Well, you can do other things that are pretty crazy, right? Like think about like, simple use case. We like to use NFT marketplaces a lot because it has storage and everyone's familiar with them. But like for an NFT marketplace, you could have transactions of those NFTs pay for the storage. Like that's something that you can do every time. Like I sell an NFT, a part, like a small chunk of that doesn't take much, right? A small chunk of that, like could go to the payment of that NFT specifically or the collection. Another thing that you could do is like for like automations, like AI agents, for example, they need memory. You can have a portion of the revenue from like that AI agent, however they choose to monetize. Those tokens can also go to pay for storage as well. So you can actually do some pretty intense automations and make it really smooth and build it into the economics model, like from the ground up.
From like a development kind of standpoint, is there any like advantages that the Outpost like really gives, like over the traditional Jackal Quick Connect? Because obviously we have other Web3 developers that are doing the copy, you know, the Amazon Web 2.5 spaghetti.
Yeah.
So like, why should we keep everything on chain, and like why should we use the Outpost?
I think the biggest one is obviously the automation and the ability to do that, as we just touched on. But Marcin, like, what else do you think? Like obviously, like storage, obviously. But I think it's cleaner. It's built on chain. But what do you think?
I mean, that's the main thing. Above all else, it's just so much easier, right? If you are building on Base, you can pay with tokens that you have on Base, and all of your contract calls are coming through Base. So if I want right now to create some application that does something on a smart contract and needs storage, right? I have to leave, I have to do some processing, and then come back, and I can automate that myself potentially. But what you can't ever do is you can't bundle multiple actions into a single smart contract because you have to leave. So if you need to do something and then leave, go somewhere else, come back, and then do something again, that's 2 transactions, one on either side of your file upload, versus now what we can do is if we say wrap the storage upload function on Base in another smart contract, we can have a smart contract do something, call the upload function on Jackal, and then do something else all within a single transaction.
So one other thing I thought was really kind of interesting, talking with Marston a little bit about like using the Outpost, is it kind of gives the ability for like on-chain communities to like step in and like pay for storage and like take it over. Like if some type of Amazon
like a community
centralized
takeover.
Yeah. And we were kind of talking about it a little bit. Like I feel like there's a couple like old PC games that I've played, and there was some centralized company that ran all these like servers. And then the game got old, and then they don't want to pay for them anymore, and then they kind of fade. But there's these like communities that like step in and like respin them back up. And I just thought it was very like interesting that since we're in full blockchain kind of like land, we can get storage paid for by like DAOs and other types of like users, and keep files going in, you know, for forever, which is something I don't think we can do in any type of AWS land. Like
no, it's really cool, right? Like for example, let's say that there's a project and there's a dev, and the dev gives up on it or something, or God forbid something happens to the dev. You have a situation where anyone can purchase storage on behalf of any other Jackal account. So if you can, like, you get the CIDs, you figure all that stuff out because they're public by default anyways. You're able to like kind of backtrack that, and you can just pay for that storage account, or you can pay for that specific NFT to live on. Right. I think that's pretty special stuff where it's the payment for it can be really elastic, but pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. The whole concept of like DAOs owning a storage account. So like if you deploy a smart contract in an Ethereum chain and a DAO owns that smart contract, well, now that smart contract can have a storage account on Jackal, and users can come to consensus and agree on uploading specific files or paying for storage, and have a community run storage account, which is just kind of impossible right now.
Same thing for like even like the AI agents, like, cause like, I guess like NFTs and all that stuff, like awesome use cases, but even for these AI agents right now with their memory, or just like having the community like pay for that memory, or just trying to figure out a way to automate that into like however like the agent takes payment.
Or having the AI pay for that memory.
AI pay for its own memory. I don't know. It's pretty interesting stuff. And it's just really malleable.
So going a little bit further down, I feel like this is a good transition. Let's talk about a new app that's about to come out that I've seen a demo for, Jackal Pin. Which I feel like Jackal Pin, to my understanding, is kind of like a pinata or something like that would normally host files on AWS. And then what does it do, Marcin? It throws them up on IPFS in an attempt to do kind of like a half-assed decentralization. So we're trying to offer a product that maybe offers a little bit more of like a full Web3 decentralization kind of like process.
It's pretty cool stuff, right? It's very similar to how Jackal Quick Connect is the S3 standard, and how we kind of use the S3 standard and make it compatible with Jackal so that we can sell to that market, for example. Same thing with Jackal Pin, where we're just using the IPFS standard and making Jackal compatible with the IPFS standard, and how like a lot of like the social apps with the NFTs, like how they use IPFS for a lot of stuff, and how they kind of like hard code that into like the NFT metadata, for example, of like where the file is. They're usually indexed by IPFS. So for us to make sure that we can serve that market, IPFS is awesome, right? So we wanted to make Jackal compatible with that, come up with an API for that, and deploy that as kind of very similar where we can approach that market. It's also really good for like things that aren't necessarily like really complex use cases. So we have, for example, an enterprise that is using it for like downloadable content for like simulation stuff. So having the ability that they can have like a community server that like has all like the other downloadable content. It's a golf simulating company, so like it's a golf sim. So you can download different maps, and you can play on golf on the Death Star if you want to. Like some people like make different maps, pretty cool stuff. But like for them, for example, like their big need was they just need to store it. They need it to be downloaded. They don't really want to get nailed on egress fees, and also IPFS adds speed. Right. So we have like this discovery layer where if files called a lot more, then it increases the density of that file on the IPFS network. So that it's kind of like acting like a CDN almost for Jackal, which is pretty cool stuff.
So when we were chatting the other day, you guys were telling me how Jackal Pin is kind of like a pinata sort of thing, and we can pay for it via credit card. Yeah. Sounds like crypto payments are going to come soon at some point for that. Who's connecting via Jackal Pin versus like people connecting with the traditional quick connect? Like where is that line kind of like divided?
I think like personally, but Marcin, you would know better than me, but I think it's like how complex is the logic, right? But
there's kind of two angles of that. One is definitely if you need a more robust, complicated data management system with permissions and everything, you're 100% going to take that quick connect route, versus if you just want, I store this, I get it back. Jackal Pin's great for that. But what Jackal Pin also really excels at is making sure that when you put data there, the actual like link to that data never changes, right? So with IPFS, the way that the CIDs work is if you upload the same file twice, you're getting the same CID twice. And so what that lets us do is if we say have a bunch of files that we want to upload to Jackal Pin, we can put them on Jackal Pin. We get a bunch of CIDs back. Those CIDs are always going to be that way. So if I ever want to upload those CIDs, or like I want to make sure that those CIDs stick around, I can like log those CIDs on chain or something like that. So you'd have a reference to that CID always, and that file never changes. So if you are on like Amazon S3, or in this case, Jackal Quick Connect, I can overwrite a file, right? So if I have, frog.jpg and I make a little edit where I draw a mustache on them and re-upload that file to frog.jpg, if I'm hosting a website or an NFT where I'm making the link to that content, frog.jpg, as soon as that file gets updated, that will be reflected in that link. Versus IPFS CIDs, all of that is very static. So if you want to make sure that your website is hosting static information like a banner image, you can upload it to Jackal Pin and you can embed that into your website and know that it will always look like that no matter when or where somebody connects from.
Oh.
Hell yeah, dude.
What kind
dude.
of like projects do we think are going to use a Jackal Pin?
Pretty
At
much
least like right off the gate.
So IPFS is used like that kind of like discovery layer. That's kind of used prominently in blockchain land. So like a lot of people that are already using that, they're probably going to want to like use Jackal Pin.
NFTs, social media networks,
like all that good stuff. That's a little bit like that needed storage. Like in the last cycle, for example, they used IPFS and they like jammed it on a server that they usually controlled. And but kind of moving into now, a lot of just simpler use cases, even in Web 2, like we were seeing, for example, with you, Jaden.
Yeah, I think obviously Jackal Pin hasn't fully come out yet, but we have, what did we just get, our 4th project that is now onboarding to test it. So we've got, 4 projects that are ready to go and are just waiting for us to fully release it. So, NFT projects are a great place to start.
Pretty crazy. Like all the top NFT projects in the Cosmos ecosystem are already like, let's go, dude. like they're ready to go.
So I feel like we've done a really good job talking about the protocol as just like a whole, how you can upload stuff just like natively to the existing protocol through like a Jackal Vault, or if you really want to build an app directly on Jackal, go for it. We don't think that's going to be a primary thing, but we
have some people doing it. We have J Sweet. We have the guy building the streaming product for sure. There's some people. We have Aegis, for example, which is like mobile. Like those guys are integrating directly with Jackal because like their primary function is literally just storage. But if you're looking to do other stuff, whether it's like AIs or like social or NFT marketplaces, and you want the distribution of other L1s, like that's where you gotta be. You gotta be where the liquidity is. You gotta be where the people are, where the community is. And Jackal is great for storage hard OS, but that's pretty much about it.
We're just trying to give storage to everybody.
Hell yeah, dude.
Everybody. The local lads on the actual Jackal L1, people on other blockchains, we don't really have any competitors. I feel like we're just trying to be friends. Just trying to be friends with everybody.
Yeah, no, it's great, right? Like it's just every chain giving it storage, giving it functionality, build bigger. I'm excited about the Outpost distribution. I'm excited about Quick Connect for the NFT guys and other like kind of like more like simple, not complex logic use cases. And then obviously, Jackal Pin was for that. And then Jackal Quick Connect is the S3 API.
Also, one last point and a different angle about the Outpost is if I'm a generic L1, smart contract L1, like a base, or like an archway, which are just 2 easy examples that we've been talking about this entire time. By forcing, not by forcing, but the current situation in which I need to leave to utilize storage, think about the value that is being lost to those ecosystems just because those ecosystems can't provide a solution locally, right? So now if I'm an NFT project that's building on base, I need to store those files. So it's either I store them on a solution that's offered in the base ecosystem, or I take off and I provide that value, or I store those files somewhere else. So it's a bit of a missed opportunity for these. Not only we can talk about the dev side of things, but for these generic L1s, they're letting value slip through their fingers just by not being able to provide a solution for the developers that are building there. Yeah,
it shouldn't be a zero-sum game, right? Like storage networks and general purpose L1s shouldn't be fighting for the same developers. It's kind of silly, right? So just like we're excited about the distribution. Just like every chain should have storage, and just by delivering it there, I think it's perfect.
I love it. Well, we've come a fucking long way in 2024 at launch of the first Outpost, launch of Jackal Vault, sharing went live, Jackal names, V4, big overhaul of the blockchain. What do we want to do this year, 2025?
So
are we allowed to talk about that now? They haven't even prepared for this.
I know.
This is a big thing.
Yeah, we're still working on the roadmap right now, but I want to say there's 3 things that we're focused on right now is Outpost distribution. So we want every chain to have access to storage. That's a big one, and we're going to be starting very, very soon on that. Like we're going to be deploying on base as soon as possible. The next thing is kind of finishing out that Quick Connect API. The Pin API is ready to go pretty much right now. We're going to be having that ready to go like mid next week.
Shit!
So that's exciting. So kind of like solidifying that and solidifying the base and getting the tooling ready to go and the outpost distribution. That's the big focus for like the first little bit of this year. And then the question becomes is just like, what's next, right? When we look at Jackal and where we look at where we're going in general, it's going to take for Jackal to be a $1 trillion protocol. Like we got to sell like a lot of storage, right? And almost like physically impossible for us to sell that much storage. For us to be valued at $1 trillion, we'd have to have every single AWS file, every single Microsoft Azure file, every single Google Cloud file. And then even at that, we wouldn't be at the capacity that we need for us to have a valuation like that. And that's where we want to shoot for, right?
So we're like nearing like mathematical
impossibility.
Well, maybe not impossibility, but like not with the current state of the world.
Yeah. So for us to go for that, like for that size and become like $1 trillion protocol, that's what it would take. Since it's impossible mathematically to do that, which is a breath of fresh air. Like we have to kind of like figure out like, okay, like where do we go? I think that where we expand as a protocol is we go two directions. When you look at like the data ecosystem of like the different layers, there's the data generation layer. This is like the socials and like those guys and all that stuff. They generate a lot of data, then they store it. That's what we've done. We've built the middle of the stack pretty well. Then there's like data warehousing and analytics where you clean the data up and you make it useful for other things. And then there's like monetization layer, right? This is where people are like selling data and stuff like that. We think that with the core values of the protocol and like the self-custody and the ownership of stuff like that, right now we have a super, super secure place to put data. But it would be really interesting as like we continue, there's all kinds of industries that are really looking for really high quality, near real-time data. So building a product on going down to the generation layer and starting there, like something where you can create a digital twin of yourself. So you can plug in your banks and plug in your social media and your watch data and all that stuff. So you can have a place where you have self-custody of all that information and making a twin of yourself. That's kind of step one, right? Get all that information there. What can that person do with that information? You have two options. Option number one would be something in the vertical of using that and preparing it for a locally hosted LLM, for example, or you could like use something that we would host and give you an LLM where you can ask yourself questions and you can get value from that data set for yourself.
Oh.
So that would be like the first thing, right?
So you're talking about I can link all my accounts and all my own stuff, and then I can ask my whatever version of ChatGPT. I can have a personalized version that just yanks everything.
Yeah, because when you go to these AI models, whether they're agents, they're all LLMs basically right now, but you go to the LLM and you ask it a question, it doesn't really know anything about you unless you force feed it with a RAG.
Mm-hmm.
But force feeding it is just like, how do you get all that information?
It's almost PDFs from my bank manually.
I know it's hard to like curate that for yourself. So creating a platform that automatically streams everything into your Jackal vault, I think that would be pretty kick-ass, right? And then you can prepare it, whether it's in whether it's like a JSON file or like a TXT file, feed that into like a self-hosted or like something that we would host for you. Ask yourself questions. You have real time and like curated personal responses. That's number one. So get value that way.
So there can be like a product for like the individual, like immediately, for them to do.
I think that would be awesome. And then moving into like what is after that, like what if like an individual, you have all this data, it's being sold anyways. What if you're able to get value from that? Where
what do you mean it's being sold anyways? So I thought Jackal was private. I didn't think it was being
no.
sold.
I'm talking about like when you use Facebook or the banks.
Yes.
So on all those platforms that you have, your data is being sold, obviously. That's how credit bureaus work. That's how they know what your credit is.
I thought they were free products. I thought they were doing it out of the kindness of their own hearts.
You have to wonder, like, how does TransUnion give me a credit score? Like, how do they know, right? Because they are plugged into every single bank. So the question becomes like, okay, if that's the case, is it possible for us to create data pools where people can turn on monetization for whatever stuff you would be comfortable with turning on monetization for? So you're like, hey, like I'm not comfortable selling my geolocation, but I'm comfortable selling my my financial data and getting paid for that instead. I think that would be pretty cool by contributing to a pool that becomes a marketplace. People can buy those data sets. They're real time. They're updating.
Wait, what is a data pool? I feel like I'm very familiar with like a liquidity pool or like a mining pool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Tell me about the data pool.
I'm kind of in the camp where, and this is like us going like, this is like forward looking, like future looking by yourself. Like, hey, I am Ian and I have Ian data. If I wanted to go sell that, not really that valuable, right? But if you take a bunch of users,
No offense.
yeah, no offense to you.
What? My data's valuable.
Yeah.
It's good.
But the more data that you can accumulate into like a pool, we're calling it, you would be able to, the value of that data set goes up. The more real time it is, the more valuable the data points are. And also like how like easily, I want to say like you can run analytics on it and how clean it is. So that is kind of by taking a bunch of users that say, hey, I'm comfortable with selling my financial data, putting that into a data pool, and then getting all the users that are comfortable with that and creating a financial data set, and then going and selling that financial data set, then it becomes more valuable. So I think that the world is going in a direction where all businesses are really data-oriented organizations. That's why Databricks and Snowflake are going gangbusters right now. I think that we're going towards a world where everyone is going to slowly become a data producer and a data consumer, whether on the individual level or the enterprise level, because like you need real-time data. The LLMs like are hungry for data all the time. Healthcare, like biotech companies, all these different things. These guys are really, really hungry for this data, and it's really hard to get that data because there's no consent. Right?
I see.
GDPR and all these, like the government does not want this to happen because there's no consent involved. So by creating a platform where you can have the choice, if you want to monetize your data, if you don't, awesome. Keep it for yourself, run your LLMs, get value from it. At least you have one place where it's all aggregated and beautiful. But if you do want to sell it, now you have an ability to provide that near real time to a data pool that creates value and you can get paid for that. So that's what I think is pretty cool.
So in theory, I make like a Jackal account in this forward thinking world.
Yeah.
I link all my traditional Web2 services, the bank account, all that sort of stuff. I can link all my existing blockchain addresses. I can upload whatever I want onto it. Then I can have an LLM that can source all of that data.
Yeah.
It can source in real time. It can update in real time.
It can update in real time, and you can export it and bring it to your own LLM, or we can try to figure out products that we can do there. But I think just by having even just an MVP of just aggregating and exporting it, I think that's pretty kick-ass.
So then I can just pick what I want to sell. So if I'm okay with selling my financial data and letting people know how much I paid for a cup of coffee in the morning or whatever weird stuff I do, I just have the option to a la carte kind of sell those data points like almost like individually, for financial data.
I think it would be aggregated into like a folder structure. That's how I see it at least. But Marcin, how do you see this? Like if we would want to go down this direction, which I'm pretty confident in, but from the tech side, you're a little bit better than I am.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like aggregating it's concerned, I think the main thing is straight out of the gate, like as far as your local data is concerned, organizing it into like a little folder structure makes a lot of sense. Just to keep things organized from like where the data originated from. Yeah. But as far as like when we start bringing them into like local LLMs and everything, that data is going to get just demolished, right? Like it's all going to get just chopped up into little pieces and put back together. And specifically for LLMs, you're going to end up getting just like a vector database anyways. And that in theory, if you wanted, you could take all of your stuff, you could run it through the vector process, and then what you're left with is like one file that you can like also re-upload to Jackal, and then you can have basically an LLM compatible database of all of your stuff stored on Jackal as well, and that you can just pull down on any device you want.
It's pretty cool. Like there's a number of ways. If we want to go RAG, we can go vector route. Like also like there's other stuff where it's pretty like it's really exciting, and I think that's the logical expansion for Jackal. Is just, okay, like we want to become $1 trillion protocol. We got to move up and down the stack, and we got to provide value that's more ways than just $15 a month per terabyte, right? So moving towards generation where you can like aggregate really easily for yourself. If you want to monetize, great. Then data warehousing analytics kind of stuff. And then obviously like marketplace style or a la carte style, where for larger organizations, I think that is like the direction that's more obvious. And the cool part about that is it's like, by doing it this way with consent, it's logical, it's consensual, it's by having people willing and consenting, it's more accurate, right? And I think it's pretty interesting end to end from that way. And I think by creating a protocol that takes a slice of transactions for the entire data marketplace end to end from generation to monetization, and I think that is like the largest opportunity for the protocol moving forward.
So if this product exists, I can make my own account. I can link everything. I now have my LLM that I can just rip any personalized answer that I need. I no longer have to download bank statements and weird things and upload them to Chat GTP and worry about them
Manually.
going through all my stuff. Should I do that? No, but sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes you just want to upload all that. Okay, so I'm putting all my good data on Jackal, and I'm going to put it there because I know it's safe. I know there's no back doors. You say I can turn on monetization for like individual things. Who's buying it?
Yeah.
How are they buying it?
That's a good question. So like at the monetization level, and like this would probably be the thing that we would build last, because like we would have to build the generation. Obviously, the MVP is like you just have it for your own personal use case. And then you move into like the warehousing analytics and cleaning it all up. And then you move into the monetization layer. People that would be interested in it, hedge funds for financial stuff. Like they're making $1 billion bets. Like they want a little bit of an edge. That's probably the most valuable data set. Also industries that are approaching new markets, for example. So like if you're like approaching a new market somewhere around the world that's emerging, they like data on that so they can make informed decisions when they're building out. That's another good one. So like financial stuff, that's kind of like the two. If you wanted to like link your watches or your Fitbit or your Garmin or your
I didn't even think about all the
Apple
health
Watch.
data too.
Oh, yeah. Or your
Whoa.
phone or your phone's like health apps, linking that. That's really valuable for biotechs. And it's also valuable for like governments might be interested on like healthcare planning.
I assume marketing would be very interesting.
Life insurance companies,
all that good stuff. Kind of like the same stuff as like the other depends, right? Like you look at all the depend space where like they're all building different things. There's like the wearable health depends. Like the whole business model for that is like they create valuable data. Same thing with like a demo for your car. That's insurance companies, stuff like that. You look at Spexy and what those guys are doing with like drone footage. That's for like city planning and
geospatial
data, like all that stuff. Like a lot of those things is like the value is to different industries, right? But you could even like create like a plugin for your browsing. So you're browsing the internet, like how you interact with websites is pretty interesting. You look at Grass. Like Grass is essentially it's a residential proxy network, that's what they call it. And you have this ability to people can use your bandwidth to look at what does the website look like for a person on this computer coming from XYZ region. And make sure that like is my website translating properly if I'm trying to reach someone that's in India, for example, or is like what does this website look like on this device? So that's kind of how that works on those kind of things, which is cool too. So there's all kinds of different data. Data is more like outpacing oil in value, which is pretty crazy, and it's pretty important for a lot of different industries. So creating a way that it's ethically sourced. It's more high quality because it's ethically sourced and it's consensual. Because that's the biggest thing with like GDPR compliance. Like they don't like governments don't like companies selling your stuff because you don't know like what is being sold. By having choice in the matter, I think that might even require a premium. Who knows?
And I guess it's a choice not to sell any of it either, and just have it all on your own. And
Even for yourself, just for your own use case. Like I would love to have an LLM that like looks at all my financial transactions and be like, hey, how do I optimize? How do I save money?
Yeah.
Where should I cut? Or looks at my
sounds great for crypto taxes.
Sounds
helpful
or,
for
or
crypto
just
taxes.
my crypto wallet. She's like, hey, bro, can you stop going to can you get off of Hyperliquid, please? Like,
Stop buying fart coin.
Yeah, start buying fart coin. Like, can you stop doing that?
I think health data on a personal level as well there's a massive opportunity. Imagine having the ability to cross-reference my own health
Biometric
data,
stuff,
biometric data with like asking an LLM questions about it. Like for example, if I were to have a watch tell me what my VO2 max score is, and then I can cross-reference with an LLM and it'll tell me not only where I am with reference to other people my age, where I should be, and then also the biggest one would be how I can improve, right? Based on your biometric data, based on the workouts that you've been doing in the past 6 months, here are the results that you've gotten. If you're looking to optimize X, here's how you do it.
Well, I wonder if we could get any like public health data out of this too, because I feel like what's really cool about this. So I feel like there's other blockchains that are doing the whole like put this device in your car and drive around. We'll sell to insurance companies, but we can just do that times everything. And I also assume like some of this could be like I don't know, like a nice Jackal branded like single place. But I'm assuming too other developers could just build like a custom data gathering point
Yeah.
and a custom marketplace with their own branding, just built on Jackal Rails.
That's kind of interesting, right? It is just creating like the rails on blockchain rails, for example, for like all these DPINs that are collecting this valuable data and making it really, really great and efficient for the actual like cleaning, data warehousing, analytics, and sale.
That sounds like the hard part.
Yeah, so
sounds like recycling.
Yes.
Like, you can't recycle everything. It's got to be clean can. Got to be able to melt it down efficiently.
So by providing a way that either like their users could get incentivized from them, or could be incentivized on our end for them to feed that data into Jackal storage, and then into data warehousing, and then into like a liquidity pool, like a data pool, for example, I think it'd be pretty interesting.
I think it'd be cool to see like some like a public health data like we've never been able to see. Like, oh, on average, people that buy pepperoni every 2 months live 3% shorter or some weird thing
Damn.
like that. Like, I feel like you could, I don't know.
I think that's more the cowboy killers, but yeah.
It's true. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I feel like you could just, I don't know. There'd be a lot of interesting data points to kind of just like go through.
There's a massive opportunity. I know there are a lot of companies in Web3 and Web2 that are doing digital twins with regards to health data, but there is a massive opportunity there. Like, for example, right now, all of my health data lives with my family doctor, right? And so if my family doctor were to retire, I'm almost completely cooked because she monopolizes my data. So if I finally, Patrick, this is going to be a sore spot for him. He's been looking for a family doctor for 6 to 8 years now. But
Welcome to Canada.
If I were to, yeah, if you know one, please hit Patrick up.
Please.
If I am going to switch pediatricians and go to another doctor, for example, the way that they would access my health data is by giving my old doctor a call and saying, hey, can you share this data with me? I don't have any of it. It's my data, but I can't see it. I don't have access to it. I don't know what they're collecting about me. And the way that you give another qualified professional access to that data is like we're living in the Stone Age.
It's interesting for like peer-to-peer opportunity, like even like Jackal Quick Connect for something like that, or even just like building it on Rails. But like the other thing that I'm interested in is like, imagine like your doctor having the ability to have access to like your real-time health data and like sharing that through Vault or like through something like that, where you can share it peer-to-peer that way, or just even have a place that you can aggregate it and download and give it to them, right? And just having something for them, like who knows what the software in health is going to be like in the next like 5 years, 10 years, and having that ability for your doctor to access that data rather than it just being sold to other people. I think that there's crazy value on the health side of things. There's crazy value on the finance side of things. There's crazy value even on geolocation, stuff like that, depending on like what you would like to share, what you'd like to keep for yourself and provide to someone that that's a professional that you work with personally. I think that just the process of aggregating, and just getting it all to one place and having a place for that to live that you can access, I think that's extremely valuable, especially in an age like today, right? I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited for that.
Talk to me a little bit more about cleaning the data, warehousing the data. Like, what do all these things mean? What does it mean to clean the data? I don't even know what it means to clean the data. I didn't know the data was dirty.
Yeah, well,
thought it was good going in.
It kind of depends, right? Of like how you acquire the data. For you to use certain applications, like if you're a business, for example, and you have like all these different data sources, you have your HubSpot and you have your Gmail and you have all this different stuff, and you have your conversion rates and your like with SurveyMonkey, like all these different like providers that label data in different ways. There's these things like Snowflake and Databricks where you like kind of connect all those things and then suck it into their platform, and then you can run analytics on it and you can do stuff like that. And those platforms also often have marketplaces as well, where some organizations like list data on those marketplaces, and then people can pull from that and then import it into their data warehouse or data lake, or sometimes they call it data lake houses or stuff like that.
Data
But
lake?
it's just analytics.
What?
It's just analytics and trying to figure out ways that you can make data useful for actionable insights, essentially.
What do you do? Just like putting it all in the same format, essentially?
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, like this, why like Databricks, for example, like they're going pretty crazy just for LLMs, for like training LLMs on your company's information. So like that's a good use case of like, it's very, very similar to how they operate, but on the personal level, I think it's interesting. And also even on the corporate level, if we can nail it on the individual with our like superpowers of consumer and crypto and incentives and stuff like that, I think that we can go pretty far with with what's possible and really push it to the limits and go for that $1 trillion protocol valuation.
Well, assuming we have the data, assuming it's cleaned up, it's no longer dirty data. It's good to go. We have people who want to buy it. Where are they buying it? How are they buying it? Are they paying for it in Jackal? Like, what would be the ideal situation?
Kind of depends, right? It depends on the individual level or on like the buy agent level. Like if an agent's coming, they want specific data, they can hit the data marketplace and just purchase some real time data. They probably have to subscribe to it, so we'd have to figure out subscription payments for that. But that's a good example of like a small scale. And then there's enterprise scale, which is a little bit more hands-on for sure. But essentially, if you choose to monetize your data, it would have to be put into like data warehousing where we'd have to deal with it. So yes, you would have to be sharing it with us to prepare for sale. So like that would have to occur. And we could do it in data pools basically, where you pool it, put it on Jackal, and then people can purchase it that way. Or you can go enterprise mode where we can send people out like Jaden.
Is this, are we just like vertically integrating? Is that the appropriate word? We started building the container's built, the container's good. What's going to go into it?
Yeah, I think just like verticalizing aggressively is the way to go for us to hit like the goals and the standard that we hold ourselves to.
I guess forward and backward, right?
Like we're moving down to the generation and we're moving up to the monetization. But I think by verticalizing all that into our stack on blockchain rails, I think that's where the future is going. And I think eventually everyone in the entire world will be both a data producer and a data consumer.
I love it. I don't even know what else to ask for this end part. How do you guys feel about it?
Marston's like, oh, we're gonna have to build that, dude.
Yeah. Let's make some promises that and it's gonna be done quarter one.
Yeah, it's gonna be done in Q1 for everyone asking.
Q1.
Yeah. No, it's
doable though. That's what I love.
It's definitely cool. It's definitely doable. How fast we do it is purely dependent on how good of a experience we want users to have and how comprehensive the data comes out to be. And that's the thing with like this data cleaning and analytics side is that's going to be like a never ending process, right? You're going to find new types of data that you can extract more from. Like if somebody's uploading a bunch of pictures of their family vacation, right? And even if they're not tagged with geolocation, well, maybe to start, we start trying to rip out the geolocation tags. And a year later, we're like, we want more from that already on the platform data. And so we start using image recognition to try and figure out where those images came from. And that gives us a whole bunch of new data points, and then we can repackage those. And so that type of system is set up to basically continuously get better forever. And we could probably spend as many development hours on that as we want to just keep making it more comprehensive.
And that's what I love, right? It's just each layer can build off of the success of the previous layer. Right? Because if one layer is not successful or doesn't scale, like the whole thing falls apart, right? So like we have storage with Quick Connect and Pin and Jackal Vault and all these things that are ready to go pretty much right now. The success of that with Jaden going out there and just selling storage gives us the ability for us to scale and then build a generation layer. And then if the success of the generation layer, where people are like loading in data so that they can use LLMs, if that becomes successful and then we are able to monetize that and protocol revenue goes up, then we can scale into warehousing and analytics. If that's successful, then we can go into data pools, or we can flip-flop both of those depending on where the market is and where we think that we can add the most value at the time. But that's kind of where my head's at.
The future. I mean, I feel like Google and all these other entities are already kind of doing this. Every time I sign in with an app on any type of platform, I'm making that link. They're obviously like sourcing all that data.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are going to make choose Jackal, like for the self-custody, for the option to sell the data, for the control?
Well, number one, for the self-custody, like that's like the first and foremost. Like I have a place where I can aggregate all of my data and I can use it for whatever I want to use it for. That's like a value proposition in its own.
Yeah.
Right. And like that's something that's very, very like I think that a lot of people would have value from that. I would have value from that. I could see myself using that where I can aggregate all my data and then I could load that into either ChatGPT if I don't care about sharing it, or I could run something local, or like we can build different things maybe with a cache and like their different libraries that they have with their like Llama and all that different stuff. That's like a value proposition in its own. And I think that kind of moving down the stack, like having the ability for you to have consent, there's no way for you to earn on your data at the individual level right now. And I think that having that ability is pretty special. you don't have an ability to like you can consent by just not using things, like, right?
But I have to use
Yeah.
email.
But-
I have to.
But by using them inherently, like you don't have a way to earn on that. Number one, and number two, you have the ability to consent and provide valuable data, and the better the data you provide, the more you can earn off that. And I think that is like equally as empowering too, right? Where you can take it back in your own hands, you can earn on it, and that's awesome from its own right.
I have a very rudimentary and high level understanding of this. So
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but my alternative to something like this is I have no choice but to let somebody else scrape and sell my data, whether I like it or not. And Google and company are cracking down on cookies, and they have been for years, right? Like I feel like every year at the beginning of the year, there's always an announcement that Google got rid of cookies. They haven't yet. How could they? It's an enormous business.
They need it for like it to be good and usable.
But-
too.
Wait, they talked about getting rid of them?
Oh, it's like on the agenda.
There's like GDPR
it's,
stuff. And,
Whoa.
like,
It's
I know
not.
in
It's
Europe-
not ethical. Like it's not ethical.
I
To just like
I decline every time. Anytime they ask me, I decline.
So I used to sell digital advertising, and every year they would say, "This is the year Google's getting rid of cookies. Check out this article." So it's always front page news. It's always in the top of everybody's mind. So right now, again, the alternative is I fork over all of my data to somebody else to sell it on my behalf, and I realize zero of that. I don't even know what's happening. So now with another option, like what Patrick is talking about, not only can I consent to it, which already makes me, as someone
Feel
who's
better,
not that
maybe.
bright, feel a lot better. But if I generate data that's meaningful, I can actually use it as some sort of a separate income source.
Well, okay, talk to me about this. You're telling me I can get paid for my data, paid for linking all my things. The more things I link and the more things I consent to selling, the more I can get paid, obviously. That makes sense. How much money we think the average guy, how much money do we think I'm going to make?
Yeah, I did some.
Any idea? I realize that's probably a loaded kind of question,
Yeah,
but
I did some modeling, right? And it kind of depends on who you are and all that stuff, and like where you live and all kinds of different things. And like I was looking at like I think that we could hit something in the range of $25 to $50 a month. Not much.
enough to pay for your Jackal storage and your LLM.
Yeah.
At minimum.
Like, but this is something where like it can, at least you get monetized for it. At least like there is a path to have like things that like you buy some gas. That's enough for you to get gas, pay your cell phone bill, maybe, like all these different things. And I think that just having the ability to do something like that is pretty special. And obviously, the more that the network effects kick in, the more the payouts could be, because the larger the data sets, the more real time it is, the better we are at delivering that. The network effects start to go pretty crazy.
I think a couple ice cream cones a month are great, but I almost think that that's the cherry on top of just being able to have more control over what happens with my data. Like if I'm earning $12 or I'm earning $20, I'm happy either way.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I actually get, even if I'm earning 6 cents on my data, the fact that somebody else that I don't know isn't making that 6 cents.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing that, like, you could argue that by having something like Gmail be free and subsidized, right? Like, normally you would have to pay for something like that. And so you can argue that, like,
Subsidize your storage. Yeah.
yeah, your data is being used. You're selling your data in exchange for like access to Gmail or access to some free Google Drive storage. But what I think is really interesting about you having full ownership of it is you're still getting paid, and you can argue one way or the other if you're getting paid more or less. That might change. But I think the really special part of that is you can hold whoever is selling your data fully accountable.
Whoa.
Whereas like with Google, yeah, I might get Gmail, yeah, I might get Google Drive, but I don't know if that's all I could be getting out of it. And that lack of knowing what is happening to your data is, I think, really an important piece of the puzzle that people should have the ability to know where their data is going and hold whoever's selling your data accountable.
It is pretty interesting, right? It is pretty interesting on that front. I think it's, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to, it's powerful for yourself. If you want to monetize, then monetize. You could pay for your storage accounts, right? Like it could do a lot of stuff on that front. But I do think that this is like an important vertical for us to not only just like have ownership, but also like power the future if you choose to do so. And it's pretty interesting.
I'm assuming too, this is like, it's obviously great for the consumer or the individuals or the people uploading the data, but I feel like the people buying the data, and I feel like the people taking the time to build like links to their data from their existing services probably benefit a lot too. Because like, look at the app store that Apple made that charges like 33% to all these developers like making all these different apps, and they have to pay the Apple tax and be held to all of the Apple stuff, which I guess is like positive in some ways because they can curtail a very specific nice environment for you. But if you have this no man's land decentralized zone, you like you're not really able to lock out any like data providers or data buyers on both ends. Like you can have as many competitors as you want in various kind of industries, like building connections to Jackal, whatever these like data streams are called.
Yeah.
What are we going to refer to that as? If I like, link
I don't
my
know.
bank
We
account
haven't
with
worked
a
on the
data
marketing.
stream or like
This is just more of like where our vision is and where we're heading and
The
how
Dataverse.
how do we build the Dataverse? No, how do we build the world's data fabric? But no, like it kind of goes into it's just really fascinating, like from my point of view. But do you guys have anything else to share on that front?
No, I just think we got to come up with a good name.
I think we need better naming, better marketing.
Yeah.
The data fabric. I don't know.
So we talked a lot, I feel like, about like the future of Jackal, like the more like ethereal future of Jackal, just kind of like our grand vision, where it doesn't just become like a place where we're buying and selling storage, but like we're aggregating data, we're warehousing the data, we're cleaning the data, we're selling the data. That all sounds awesome. That sounds like a lot of data. Sounds like a ton of data.
All the data.
Is the chain going to be able to handle that much data? And how do we envision the chain potentially scaling as time goes forward? Because at some point, it's got to get bigger, right? Maybe. I don't understand.
It does, yes.
And this is all a Marston thing. Marston, what happens when we hit the theoretical, technological limits of the chain as it stands today? How are we going to make it bigger, faster, stronger, harder?
Thank you, Daft Punk. Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about this, especially lately. And I think our first kind of foray into that was jumping from V3 to V4, right? What we found is the way that we were doing proofs, we could optimize it to move the proofs around, change how often each file needs proved and everything. The next kind of step, it's something that we built out for V3 and it's kind of ready to go in V4. We just haven't kind of enabled it yet because we haven't seen scalability challenges, is consensus spheres. And we talked a lot about consensus spheres. We have a whole blog post on them. But essentially what that means is right now, when you make a proof to the Jackal chain as a storage provider, you upload an entire chunk of your file, plus a whole bunch of extra metadata to prove that your file is the way that it is. In consensus spheres, instead of putting all of that data on chain, which is where the big bottleneck comes from, is how much data is going through the chain at a time. What we can do is we can offload that to the storage providers themselves and make sure that when you want to prove a file, instead of sending that piece to the chain, you send it to other storage providers who then verify and attest on your behalf that your file is good. That system reduces bandwidth like crazy. And it's
consensus sphere.
Yeah. So
why is it a sphere? What does that mean?
Because life's a circle.
Yeah. I mean, it's
okay. First off, a sphere is 3D. You guys don't.
Sphere is 3D.
It is.
It's a nice name. Essentially, in network topology, we'd be creating essentially a ring, and that ring is not that interesting, so we called it a sphere because it's kind of the same shape. And we like thinking about it like there's really no like two dimensions on it, because storage providers are everywhere, right? And if you look at how they're actually laid out in the globe, they're all over a sphere. And so every time we create a subset of these providers, we can plot all of them as well on a sphere.
Well, wait,
and
talk to me
create
about
a
that.
bunch of smaller spheres out of the global sphere that is the storage provider network.
So right now, the Jackal Protocol has one sphere.
Yes.
One sphere, one
One
big
sphere.
sphere.
It's just the Earth
Yes.
and the storage providers that are on it.
Yes.
And then soon we'll have multiple spheres as we go out.
Yeah. So every time you make a proof, you basically tell the chain, hey, I want to make this file proof.
Mhm.
And the chain picks a set number of storage providers at random.
Mm-hmm.
Those providers are then listed out to the storage provider that needs to make the proof. And that storage provider then sends all those providers its proof. Those guys verify the proof, and then they attest on behalf of that storage provider. So what we do is we create almost like a temporary consensus engine on top of our existing consensus engine.
Oh, okay.
And then it dissolves once the proof is complete.
I think it's also important to like say why it reduces bandwidth too, because Marcin was talking about like, okay, like we do attestations instead of proofs of the chain. Like what that means is like when we prove a file is alive on the chain, we send like a 1 kilobyte chunk, I think, right? 1 kilobyte?
Right now it's 10 kilobytes.
10 kilobyte chunk. So a 10 kilobyte chunk gets sent to the validators, and the validators
the file?
From a file. So like the storage providers, like the validators say, hey, storage provider, prove that you have this file. And the storage provider goes, okay, bro. And he goes, grabs a 10 kilobyte chunk and then sends it to the validators. And the validators go, okay, you got it. Right? Because they have the Merkle proofs.
Yeah.
So the reason why like this reduces bandwidth is instead of sending 10 kilobytes to the chain, the providers create a sphere around one provider, right?
And then all they have to do is send yes.
Yeah. So basically they say, hey, other provider, send us a proof that you have it. And then all those providers come to consensus that he has it. And then they send like a tiny, like how big is like an attestation, like a yes, no. It's a binary, just a 1 or a 0.
Yeah, it's just a true or false value.
Yeah, so
there's
like,
a little extra metadata to like say
like,
which provider it's coming from and everything.
So
but
it's like bytes.
It's very small. Yeah, it's very, very small.
So like that's like a 1,000x improvement basically. Like
yeah, I think it was a 17,000 times improvement or something like that.
17,000
Yeah, we
times
did the
bandwidth.
math at some
Baby,
point.
there we go.
Like for how much of an improvement is theoretically possible right now with given the chain parameters that we can change with consensus spheres. It's huge. It's really, really huge. And that essentially like we're not reducing any like greater bandwidth, right? Like you're still sending that file around, but storage provider bandwidth is far cheaper than on-chain bandwidth.
That makes sense.
So
that makes sense.
essentially what we're doing is we're just moving it off of the chain onto the storage providers themselves. And that gives us crazy scalability improvements.
Let's say that we get in a situation where like that's not enough.
Yeah.
Right. So like consensus sphere is like, oh my gosh, like we have so many little bytes of data here and we can't handle it for all the files that are on the network because every file has to be proved. What do we do next? Like, let's say that like, oh my God, like the validators are just being overwhelmed. We have billions and billions of files just yelling at the validators. What do we do then?
That is an excellent question. So from there, we thought a lot about this. Because of the way that we are a purpose-built Cosmos L1, we can do a lot of really cool things, especially with blockchain communication over IBC. What we're able to do is we're able to take our current blockchain and we're able to scale it out so that it becomes kind of a hub for other smaller dedicated blockchains.
Whoa.
And those blockchains will essentially do the same thing. They'll take in all of those proofs and say, yes, this is good. Yes, this is good. And what they'll do is then, instead of all of these proofs needing to flow through the main chain, we're able to aggregate a list of all the files that were correctly proven and send just a list of those files to that main chain.
Yeah.
And not ever have to deal with creating and removing those consensus spheres. And that can essentially scale forever. That's just like a full horizontal scale. Eventually that main hub will run out of bandwidth. And then what we'll end up needing to do is take that main hub and have it have other hubs that then connect to more networks. And essentially we're just going to scale up until we get one final proof that says, yes, your file's stored and you get rewarded. And we can start distributing out the rewards to the other networks. So even if we get overwhelmed with how often we're sending tokens out on the main hub, we can distribute that out to some of the smaller networks. So then they get paid around with IBC tokens. And then at the end, it just all kind of aggregates back to an initial token value since it's all through IBC.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that like we can kind of scale horizontally like that. And that's like one of the beauty of like the Cosmos SDK. Is that kind of similar to how like the Cosmos hubs looking to like onboard like Neutron and other chains? Is it kind of like very similar, a little bit different?
It's similar. We'd be doing a little bit more like interoperability. So they're kind of proving that they're alive and well, where we're trying to prove both that we're alive and well and that we're also doing storage deals. But what's really cool about that is if we really scale to the point of like having so many files on
the protocol
our chain.
crushing.
If the protocol's doing really well,
The protocol's eaten.
there's a possibility where we can scale out an entire subnet just dedicated to a small subset of users.
Yeah.
And like if there's like 2 or 3 users that are producing petabytes,
They
of
can
data,
have their own
They can have
subchain,
their
yeah.
own subchain that responds back to that main chain and have their own dedicated bandwidth as long as they continue to fund that child chain.
Yeah, so Jaden's goal is to make as many chains as possible. You gotta get out there, dude. Get out there. And
I'll be like one of those hockey players that underneath all their gear, they're still wearing like the 2 or 3 gold chains that they have on. That'll be me. The more the merrier.
Yeah, for every new chain, Jaden gets a chain.
I think that's a good, you kind of mentioned it, but it's a good little summary of what our 2025 plans are. Summed up in one word. I think it would be that word right there.
You gotta eat. Can you see it?
No, he definitely can.
Protocol gotta eat. You're gonna eat your data.
All right, so we got the main blockchain. We got these child chains, side chains, whatever the hell chains we're calling them. Then we got the consensus spheres that will be, I guess, underneath those chains, right?
Yeah, it's kind of its own. Like they're kind of like
The spheres are storage, and chains
yeah,
are
like the storage providers
validators.
and the validators of the chains. The storage providers like can serve many chains. Can they?
Yeah, one
interesting.
storage provider could,
I think they
could
can, right?
connect to so any storage provider can connect to as many chains as possible. Then essentially it'd be a whole thing about like rebalancing token values across those different chains because it'll all still be one IBC token, but we'd have to bounce them across each chain to make sure that they were funded on whatever chain they're connected to. But that is just an engineering problem that we have to tackle, and it's pretty straightforward.
Let me ask you this as well. There's obviously blockchains, like various ones that operate at various speeds with various sets of validators. Would all of our chains like share the validators? Would they have separate validator sets? Could some have one validator?
Well, you could
some
probably
have
run 2 validators
or-
on the same machine, likely.
It would depend on how much we're shoving through it.
Yeah.
Ideally, we would require either very similar to what like the Cosmos Hub is doing, where we have like partial set security, where if we have say like 100 validators on the main Jackal chain, like 10 of each of those validators or something each get their own subchain, or the top 10 need to run all the chains as well, and then we have like each smaller chain is only like 10 validators instead of 100. We could definitely scale that route because they would be kind of all using IBC tokens anyways. There's really not a huge risk of asset issuance bugs where like right now, if we were to create Jackal and it only had like 10 validators, right? If 50% or 60% or whatever the required value is to attack that network, you could just print new Jackal tokens out of thin air, right? If you were dealing with that same system on one of these smaller chains, the worst case scenario is they say a file is proven when it's not. And so they can't create new tokens out of thin air because that main Jackal chain that would be the hub is the asset issuer.
Yeah, right. Because like it's the beauty of this is we can like scale a lot faster just because like we're not defending like on those subchains. We're not like protecting like billions of dollars.
Yeah, we don't have the
token.
economic security.
We don't
concerns.
like the economic security. Obviously, it's important that like we maintain like self custody and privacy and ownership and all that stuff. But the likelihood of like an attacker doing that to like just like blindly like shoot a random file.
Well, they wouldn't even know what file
they don't know what
corrupting.
files
They wouldn't even
which,
know.
and you'd have to do all that effort just to like open a random file. I think that's pretty crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, and it wouldn't even be like you'd suddenly get access to the file.
Yeah, because it's encrypted.
Yeah, you would just simply like potentially take take a file, and that would be the best thing that you can get out of
like,
attacking one of those smaller chains.
Congrats, bro.
So
you got
obviously we're concerned about security in that realm, but just far less than the actual Jackal hub chain. And so we'll kind of continue to have those central validators maintain that main chain, and we can get away with a smaller validator set with a little less security on some of those child chains.
Interesting. I guess like child chains aside, I know at some point we were talking about, can we have a set of storage providers that has like some premium storage? Like, ultra fast speeds, or maybe like a set that's just South American based,
Yeah,
or like geo based, or
We're
something like that.
about this.
We're going to need to have like subnets for storage providers for specific regulations, right? So if like we need like for example, we were dealing with we were talking to an airport and their CCTV camera footage, but they needed to be within the borders of a specific geographical region.
Same thing with law firms.
Same thing with law firms. Same thing with like some of like the more like highly regulated data, even though it's arguably less secure to do it this way. Like it's arguably like a worse security posture by like forcing it on our network specifically within a specific geographical region. But I guess like for the reasons like they want to like kick down the data center doors and get access if they have to.
It's table stakes. You need to have that to be able to do business with a lot of these people.
Yeah, so for that, we're gonna have to do subnets, and like we're gonna have to have like a storage provider, like kind of like a Filecoin does something called Filecoin Plus, where it's just like the best like archival storage providers, like they can like sign up for that and they can earn extra rewards. That's probably how we'd have to do it. But in my mind, but Marcin, what do you think?
I mean, very similar. We can do a lot of really cool stuff on the chain directly now with V4. We added a new field to every single file called the notes. And those are fully extensible. They can do whatever you want them to do. You can fill them with arbitrary data. And what we can do with this is we can allow individual files to have essentially what's an allow list or a block list in there. And that can be something that we do later down the road, where you can say, I want only these storage providers, or only providers that the chain agrees are from
XYZ
location. And the chain can actually enforce those when we do our proof of persistence and we start replicating those files. We can make it so that storage providers either on the deny list or that aren't part of that geographic region, they physically, according to the chain parameters, cannot act as a verifier for that file deal. And that way we can prevent any sort of regulatory issues happening from a chain level, rather than just needing to kind of spin up a side chain. Obviously for higher security posture, where like they can't even download the encrypted copy of that file, then we would spin up kind of a sub network. But for just like geographic compliance, that's something we can fully enforce on chain.
Same thing for the validators, right? Because they might have rules where like the validators need to also be in a geographical region. So we could like create like one of those subnets. They're just like, okay, like this is like the Canada Ontario sub chain or child chain or side chain, however you want to say it, right? So like I think like as we continue to scale and as we start to hit more use cases that have like more bespoke needs or like bespoke compliance from whatever government that they're governed by, we can be flexible to that. And but we have so many other opportunities right now of like where we can go. So like putting in like the extra work for that at this moment, not ideal, just because like we can just hammer different industries and different verticals and like gaming and stuff like that where they just don't have that regulation. But as we start to approach things like healthcare or camera footage or stuff like that, then we can implement stuff like that.
Even a lot in the EU. Like I know that there are like cruise lines in the EU who have regulatory framework with regards to what they can and can't do with their data.
Yeah.
But that was the beauty of V4, right? We really tried to, I mean, it was our third or fourth time rewriting major parts of the stack. But
we built the protocol. Well, if you count Keepsake, then we built Keepsake once, and then we built on the secret network, and then Filecoin, and then we cut Filecoin. We just had the secret network in us, and then we had the limitations of the gas and like some of the stuff there. And
so
like,
we built our own network,
and
then
we built our own network,
did it again,
and then we relaunched it, and then we rebuilt it again. So like we're on like
we learned this time though that we would this like notes field that we added, if we had added this entire system that we set up for V4 earlier, we wouldn't have had to do a lot of the work we had to do in V4. So this time, if there is ever a feature like geo-distributed geolocking, or like even just things like sharding your file, and so instead of having 3 full copies, you split it into like 50 pieces, that type of system can be fully enabled in the future using our notes field that we made in V4, which was probably the best decision we've ever made.
It's just like, it's just every single time it just like gets like 10x better, and it's pretty special like that we're in like a very stable and comfortable spot right now, so that we can approach different things. We can build the S3 API, we can go and build Pin, we can expand on Vault and make Vault scale and like have that great user experience. And to even have some of our customers saying that like, wow, like this is blazingly fast is just like, wow, like no way that we are actually fast, because like blockchains are not known for fast. Like usually everyone's
download speeds faster than Google Drive.
Yeah, like our IPFS pinning service, like with like Jackal storage underneath, like it was being faster than Google Drive at the consumer level, which is insanity.
Whoa, that's big.
Which it's pretty special stuff. It's pretty special.
Is
stuff.
that cloud parity?
I would say that's cloud. I would say that's cloud parity, but it's not like fully like.
The feature set isn't fully there.
Yeah.
Like we that's like one aspect of cloud parity. I think we're making really great progress towards cloud parity, and that's kind of proof of it. But I don't think we're quite there yet, just because of
the pinning server is still inherently like you have to have like middleware there, which like is lame. But like as we continue to scale the protocol and build the protocol, we're gonna get to a point where they matchy.
I feel like we touched on so much. This is like a 3-hour long deep dive.
Dude, this is gonna be like this is gonna be like a Lex Friedman broadcast, like 6 hours.
This.
I know it's gonna take. Yeah, this will definitely take me some time to edit. Let's just wrap it up with one last thing. Are you guys gonna make a digital evidence application for courtroom usage, or what? Isn't that what you guys set out to do? And look at you guys zoomed out so far. You zoomed out.
Maybe one day.
Look at where we're at.
Might as well at this point, you know. But no, like. When we made the decision to build the L1, that's a decision that like we are now like our primary goal is to make sure that it is stable and secure, whether it's us building on the app layer or other people building on the app layer. So we built this, we built the protocol, we have a token that's live, and like our first like responsibility is to steward that and protect that for our not only like our VC investors, but also like the community members that choose to have faith in the protocol. So that's our main priority is maintaining and building out the protocol. Number two, like we have two goals, right? Like number one is the protocol needs to get cash flow positive, right? I don't think there's any Cosmos blockchains that are cash flow positive right now. And there's very few blockchains, period, that are cash flow positive. So getting it to that point with something like selling storage is very, very possible. And it's very attainable. And that's what I'm excited about just by selling storage. The second thing is getting Jackal Labs cash flow positive, right? So like we don't have to be a burden on the protocol itself. So like we can put in more than we take out. And that's also important. And we have to get to that point. And obviously like you're building blockchains, deep tech, bootstrapping, it takes time. But with us building things like the S3 API with Jackal Quick Connect or Jackal Pin, having revenue from that really, really helps us as well. So we can take out.
I mean, those applications drive revenue both to the protocol itself because we're building on top of the protocol.
That's the thing. All the apps that we build, like we have to pay the protocol.
True.
Like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like there's no free rides. Right?
I mean, we have a storage account, or I do, on the Jackal Labs team where I upload all the videos and stuff, and we had to pay for it.
We have to pay for that. So like the revenue. So let's say that like Jackal Quick Connect runs. So it's 3x redundancy, multi-region geo-distributed storage. It's verifiable. You have all these feature sets. And say we're able to charge, let's say starting rate for like a consumer is like $23 a month, right? For a terabyte, well, for 3 terabytes, but we don't have to get into the feature list. $15 of that still has to be purchased from the protocol.
Yeah.
Like $15 a month is the fixed cost of providing that service, right? Obviously, like that margin is not very much, but at the same time, it's pretty special that we're able to create value for Jackal Labs and also provide protocol revenue for the protocol. And then moving forward, and our goal to kind of expand both down the stack into something like a twin, like Jackal Twins, where you're aggregating data. We can get revenue from that, and then we could also get revenue on like the data warehousing side of things, and it gives us a lot of different opportunities to have revenue for the like for Jackal Labs and for the protocol, which is pretty special too.
Oh yeah, I love it. Who made it to the very end of this?
Yeah, do you make it?
You're still here. Are you on an airplane ride? Is it that boring? Are you asleep? What's like the deal?
You let it autoplay?
Yeah. Bro just listened to 3 hours of decentralized storage and data spheres and some craziness. But thank you for being here with us.
I feel like there's a developer who's just like rolling over on their side, and it's 4 a.m. and they just woke back up, and they we're all the way here at the very end.
Dreaming,
of the podcast.
just dreaming about decentralized storage.
Their brain's part of of the Dataverse now.
Yeah, your brain's in the Dataverse, bro.